depends on where you find that empathy. Look at this.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Now it's time for us to take a look at the front pages of the newspapers. And of course, we'll start with Daily Trust newspaper. Major headline on the front page reads, "Exclusive. I'll dialogue with IPOB, other agitators," says Peter Opi. And it actually comes with riders here. It says, "Cumulative leadership failure cause agitations, and I'm not an Igbo candidate. And I'll use North to develop Nigeria." Moving further down the front page, talking about some international news now. Ethiopia, Tigray ceasefire as Obasanjo facilitates talks. Details of that are on page 6. FG to establish 3.5 billion naira space museum in Abuja. Details of that on page 30. And 18 foreigners arrested for possessing voters' cards. Right at the bottom of the front page there, EFCC raids Kano Forex Market, arrests BDC operators. For details of that, you turn to page 5. Going towards the top of the front page, below the nameplate, Finance Minister, Budget DG, Accountant General sabotaging Buhari's anti-graft war. And this is according to reps. "You're on your own," or your PDP leaders slam Makinde over Tinubu. Now, coming back to the economy, CBN's Naira redesign triggers panic buying of grains and price hike. Details of that can be found on page 25. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Well, let's take a look at some more stories on This Day. And This Day newspaper is leading with a story about Atiku. Shatima's statement denigrates business that employs thousands of workers. And the writers there, you can see, maintains politics, doesn't confer license to be reckless, says Tinubu's running mate should apologize to Nigerian workers employed by his businesses. Dele Momodu, ex-VP, remains one of the biggest employers of labor in Nigeria. You'd find other interesting stories as well on This Day newspaper. MFLA, weak infrastructure, low income, others hampering digital financial integration. Obiora puts volume of e-Naira in circulation at 2.10 billion Naira. ShopRite, Sahad stores, Eirano, others embrace digital currency. And on page 10, you see the story about Oshomole. Fuel subsidy has been huge source of fraud for long. Sounds very interesting. Details of that story is on page 10. And then PDP drags APC to court over alleged unlawful convention. That story is on page 43. And then you see the one about it's payback time. Shatima tells Hausa community in Lagos. These are the major stories on This Day.
Next, we'll take a look at a leadership newspaper, and it has this major story on the front page. 2 months after leadership queries, U.S. Embassy yet to speak on Bagoda Kalto's death. That is on page 4. And it comes here with riders, refuses to respond to letters and emails by leadership. Ex-U.S. envoy Russell Hanks fingered in Durban hotel bombing, now elusive. And again, police DSS keep mum over call for investigation. And still talking about other things on the front page of the leadership newspaper. Politics specifically, INEC to spend 355 billion naira on a 2023 polls. And still talking politics, 2023 PDP New Generation unveils Youth Campaign Council. Details of that on page 11. Cabal won't run my government, says Atiku, and that is on page 7. While security threats under control, presidency reassures Nigerians. That is another story on page 7 of the leadership. Going towards the top of the front page, terrorists demand 30 million naira ransom for 39 abducted Katsina children. Details of that on page 9. And Rivers releases 78 billion naira for projects. And that is on page 7 of the leadership newspaper. Now, those are the major stories on leadership newspaper this morning.
On the Punch this morning, Forex crisis. EFCC arrests 87 Forex dealers in Abuja and Lagos. And the writers there say Forex traders angry as agency conducts more raids, seizes phones. Bauer meets senior bank officials, Dealers Association. And then licensed dealers back raids, share pros and cons. And then there's a very interesting pictorial there that shows you where Ganduje begs Lagos House of Communities to back Tinubu Shetima. Details of that story is on page 6. And then just right above the nameplate there, floods, federal government okays 506 billion East-West road contract. You'd see the story about aggrieved presidential aspirants have a right to complain. That's according to the APC. Power, Senate to grill minister over 147 billion naira project. And that story is on page 22. Katsina abduction, woman abducted while raising wedding money. That's sad and interesting. At the same time, that story is on page 28. And then you see the story about Ifeanyi, Davido's nanny cook may face charges for negligence. Oil theft, 134 ships rust as court cases drag. Those stories are on pages 16 and 17 on The Punch.
Next newspaper we'll look at is the Guardian newspaper, and it focuses on the Afenifere issue, where it carries this headline: Afenifere, I remain leader, says Adebanjo as Fashoranti returns. And it comes with riders here, says Fashoranti Afenifere meetings will now hold in Akure, while Adebanjo says old age caused Fashoranti to be dragged into this mess. Yoruba leaders mum on leadership tussle, while Adewale says the endorsement confirms with creation and ethics of Afenifere. That is the major story on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Going down the front page now, 2023 PDP asks court to sack all APC candidates and Adamu-led NWC, and that is on page 6. Anyauku mourns Mbazulike Amechi, and that is on page 2 of the Guardian. Right below the nameplate here is the pulse. WHO, that's WHO, alerts to circulation of 8 tainted baby syrups, and that is on page 3. Adeshina Akufo-Addo, others pitch African opportunities to global investors. Another headline here reads: Obaseki dismisses CBN's planned Naira redesign as political. And Rivers releases 78 billion naira for completion of project and award of new ones. That is also on page 2. Now, these are the major stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
And on the Nation newspaper, 2023, APC's unbeatable in Lagos, says Tinubu. Shetima Ganduje rally Ariwa community, APC presidential candidate preaches unity. You'd find other stories as well on the Nation this morning. Federal High Court names task force on pre-election cases. Canada plans to welcome 1.4 million migrants from Nigeria. Others. That's interesting. Afenifere drops Adebanjo as acting national leader. Rivers government okays 78 billion for completion of projects. Others. Flooding are planned to avert food shortage by federal government. Shell votes $1 million to support victims in Niger Delta. And then road housing project contractors owed 956 billion, says Fashola. Then you see the story about World Health Organization predicts 30% rise in Africa's cancer deaths in 20 years. These are the major stories on the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is the Sun newspaper, and carries this headline on the front page: 40 farmers kidnapped in Katsina. Atiku Tinubu continue personal attacks. Now, that is the major story on the front page of the Sun newspaper. And FX challenge worsens as dollar scarcity hits banks. That's talking about the foreign exchange issue. And of course, ministers, officials understanding confrontation fights, says reps. And going towards the bottom of the front page there, INEC to spend 355 billion naira on 2023 elections. Now, that is another interesting one on the front page of the Sun newspaper. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Daily Sun this morning.
Well, there you go. Now it's time for us to take a look at these stories and do a proper review of the story. And we have in the studio Nasra Lawal, Editor-in-Chief, Dateline Nigeria, as usual here. to talk to us. Good morning and welcome to Daybreak.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Well, we have quite very interesting stories on our front pages this morning, but exclusive to us, the Daily Trust, where we had a conversation with Peter Obi, the presidential candidate, and he's saying our dialogue with IPOB, other agitators, and some of the writers there says cumulative leadership failure caused agitations. I am not an Igbo candidate. I'll use North to develop Nigeria. Quite very interesting comments, I must say. What do you think about his assertions?
Well, whoever becomes the president in 2023, actually, it will be good for him or for her, because we also have a female candidate in the race,
I'd love that.
to actually dialogue with all these agitators, like he said. It will be good to know, for instance, what IPOB is actually fighting for. But attempting to do the dialogue is one thing, and then the other parties agreeing to come to dialogue is also another thing. Like other agitators like the Boko Haram, the ISWAP and what have you, they are not interested in anything dialogue. They have an agenda and they are like 100% committed to pursuing that agenda. So now that Peter Obi is actually saying this, I think it's very important. Nigerians will now understand how he feels, what he thinks about all these agitations. And honestly, believe me, without, coming to dialogue with most of these people that are carrying arms and what have you, we may not be able to achieve much, because I don't think, even if it is, for you to have your own country, is something that you will be able to do just by carrying weapons. In the end, you will have to all come to the negotiation table and then be able to reach a stand. And he also talked about so many other things, like he is not an Igbo candidate.
Yeah.
Of course, you expect him to say that. And that's for Nigerians to actually decide. If they see him as one, there is actually nothing he can do about that. But it's also good that he's coming out to say that, because already so many people are saying the race is being ethnicized already, because you have somebody from the north, you have also somebody from the southwest, and him coming from the southeast. There is that possibility of all the zones, deciding to just go with their own, and which will not be good for Nigeria. So I think it's good that he's coming out to say this, that Nigerians should treat him based on what he is offering, and not necessarily because he comes from the southeast.
Well, you also touched on another issue, which is the issue of subsidy. And we've heard this song and dance before, most especially from the current administration. They said they were going to remove subsidy, they were going to do away with it. A timeline was given, that timeline came, and now it has been shifted to something else, and we're still in the middle of it. Recently, there has been reports of how bad oil theft actually is, because he talked about the consumption numbers, that we are consuming so much products, but we are not supposed to have those numbers on it. Looking at the whole entire petroleum industry and what he has said about it, is there any hope that maybe if he does become president, there's any hope that he will be able to implement these? Because just like I said, we've had this song and dance before.
Well, he is now saying it, and just like you said, it's only when he becomes the president that you will be able to hold him to account, over all the things that he is now saying. But I think I want to agree with him that our consumption, honestly, the figures that people are, or the NNPC rather, is bandying, I don't think it's credible, because like he said, our population is just like that of Pakistan, and then they have more roads, they have so many other things that we actually don't have.
Right.
And then he's wondering how it will be possible for Nigeria to be consuming that much amount of fuel, while Pakistan is doing with much less. And he is actually not the first person to do that, because even the Comptroller General of the Nigerian Customs Service actually said that it will be impossible, for Nigeria to be able to be consuming millions of liters, daily. So what basically he's trying to say, even the subsidy, the subsidy that the government is paying, actually very few people are benefiting from it. I don't want to believe, or I'm not one of those who think the subsidy thing is entirely bad. No. If the government can actually follow up on the money to see where the money is ending, I think it's going to be a good thing. But at the moment, what we are having, those who are into the business are actually the ones who are benefiting. They will collect from the government and then also collect from the people, which is very bad. So it's good that he's telling us his position on subsidy, and I think Nigerians should keep watch, so that if perchance he becomes the president, they will have so many things to hold him to account over.
You're talking about subsidy. We're also seeing Oshomole saying that subsidy has been a huge source of fraud for a very long time. Why do you think he's making this statement at this time?
Well, it has always been, and Oshomole is one of the front runners of the Tinubu campaign. So I see it as an attempt, to say that even though you have an APC administration at the moment, it's not as if all the policies that they are pursuing, we also like part of it, that we also have our own idea of how things should be done, and people should treat us based on that, not necessarily because the present APC government is going ahead with the subsidy. Because if you remember, even the president, at a point, even to this time, I don't think he believes that actually the subsidy, there is any subsidy in the consumption or production of petroleum resources in the country. So honestly, I see Oshomole basically as trying to say maybe by the time a Tinubu government is in place, we'll make sure that the right thing is done. Because at the moment, what they are passing for subsidy is actually fraudulent.
Well, there are lots of talking points when it comes to Nigeria and it comes to Nigerian politics. And of course, I think we've always said this, and it has been like a mantra that's been chanted. Let's do issue-based politics. Let's focus on the issues. Let's talk about the issues. Recently, and most of the papers actually carry that, there's been some mudslinging between political opponents and the rest of it. Shetima says this, Atiku says that, and there's lots of mudslinging between them. How good is this, or how good or how bad is this for the polity at this time, since we're not focusing on the issues, they're actually focusing on each other?
Well, I think I'll blame the generality of Nigerians for things like that. Believe me, if Nigerians are to decide that we don't want to hear, all the negative things you have to say about your own opponent, just tell us exactly what you intend to do when you become elected, things will begin to change. But if you go on all the social media platforms, you'll see that even the followers, basically that's what they talk about. Nobody is talking about anyone's ability to do A, B, C, or D. No, it's your ability to be able to drag your opponent in the mud. That's what people are actually after. And then if you look even at the stories, honestly, all these stories that I wouldn't even want to call them stories, are actually the ones that are having all the clicks.
Yeah,
when people are talking about real issues, nobody pays attention. So I blame, like I said, I will blame the generality of Nigerians.
So basically now this is a tactic employed by the candidates to keep attention on themselves.
Yes, because you actually look for what your people want, and then you give them the material so that they decide what to do with it.
Well, that's interesting, but a lot of people would say, well, by now, we thought Nigerians might have learned their lesson. and then maybe something will be different this time around. But it seems like we're still going in a circle, and we're still back.
I think
to
4
that
years
point.
is such a long period for Nigerians now that after in every election cycle we'll say, okay, fine, this is what we have learned, and then before it comes back again after another 4 years, we have all forgotten, and then we go back to where we actually were, because these are issues that have been there all along,
over and
and we keep talking about them, and we say we're going to make a change, but unfortunately it doesn't happen, and we're seeing the same thing now.
Yeah, you know, sadly, we are we have like a very short attention span in Nigeria. You know, you may be talking about a serious issue. For instance, talking about maybe a government official embezzling money in his trust and things like that. And then the moment you have like a Manchester City versus Liverpool, that's the end of it. Nobody will talk about what the minister did or what the official did. We'll all concentrate on what is happening, you know, in the Premier League, which is quite unfortunate. So that's actually the problem that we have. Our attention to details, you know, is actually very short. Once there are new things, we just move on. Like so many people are even saying, if you look at the Naira redesign that is at the moment, some are already saying, no, the government is just introducing it just to divert attention. So attention from what?
What exactly?
Because right now you have so many fuel queues, you have so many things that
too
you
many
can...
problems.
So many problems that you can talk about. But like I said, once there is something, you know, in the entertainment industry or the sporting arena, then that's the end of it. Nobody talks about the important issues anymore.
Very interesting. Well, another very disturbing news, well, it's the interesting story that has been making rounds on social media, even on TV, that has been reported, is the issue about EFCC raiding, you know, Forex market. We're seeing in Kano, there's also that raid, you know, that happened just yesterday. I was speaking to one of the BDC operators who was taken into custody by the EFCC, and they had to sleep over, you know, in the EFCC office, and they were just told, okay, we just want to question you. And some of them said, we are licensed operators by the CBN, why are we being taken into custody? And I'm sure you reported that as well. So I just want to hear your comments about that raid.
Let me start by saying that I'm happy you made the clarification that you called the BDC to find out, you know, what happened to him. I thought you were actually trying to transact
No.
some money. But honestly, if you look at it, I don't think this is a problem we'll be able to solve by just raiding the BDCs. You know, if there is a demand for something, actually there is little or nothing you can do to stop that demand, because people actually want it. And I blame the Forex regime we have in the country for things like this. Why should you have the dollar selling at official rate, selling at around 414 naira, and then you call it the parallel market, where you can actually sell it 800 or above? So what do you expect people to do? If I have some dollars, actually I wouldn't take it to the official sources. I will take it to where I will be able to make money.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So it's left to Nigeria, that's the authorities, to actually come up with the best way of handling this, which is unifying all these Forex markets, so that we have just one regime. You know, it's either you use that or then you opt out of it completely. Because why should you be going to maybe a bank and then accessing dollar at, like I said, 414 naira, and then taking it outside? And then by raiding the people, there are so many people that are actually don't have any case to answer. You know, it's their money, and then you allowed this system to actually operate. So you can't blame them for going to participate, to patronize a system that you believe yourself to be legal.
Absolutely.
So if you think that system is wrong, that system is not good, what you should do is to make sure it doesn't exist anymore. It's not for you to be going after people you know, to be frustrating them when they are actually trying to make one or two things out of their own hard-earned money. But if you have a case, you know, that you can actually establish that there is a case of wrongdoing, then by law you have that mandate. You should be able to do that, whether we are talking about redesigning the currency or not, whether we are talking about high demand for foreign exchange and things like that.
Well, there are actually some belief that the BDCs are providing an essential service, because these, just like you said, there's a high demand for these dollars, and commercial banks are really not cutting it when it comes to meeting the supply.
Absolutely.
So if we do away with the parallel market, as you say, wouldn't that cause serious pandemonium in the economy?
Well, I don't think so, because our currency of transaction at the moment is the naira. We are here in Nigeria. If you want foreign currency, you should get it wherever you want to spend it. Not, you know, it shouldn't be our responsibility, you know, to satisfy
the demand
for dollar. Because how many people are actually demanding for the dollar? Like we said, so many of those that are demanding for the dollar, you will see that maybe they have kids studying abroad, you know, maybe they are looking for it to be able to maybe access medical treatment abroad, or things like that. Some are actually just trying to access it to go, is it shopping, international. And
so basically it's just rich people.
Yes, basically just the rich people. But you see that the impact will now be felt even by those who have no idea, you know, how that market even operates.
Some of them haven't even seen a dollar before.
And then they are also like the major, you know, victims of the things that are happening. So, like I said, if whoever is interested in accessing all these foreign currencies, honestly, he should be able to do that. The government should have no business, you know, trying to support him. If it is maybe an importer, you know, that then you can make the argument that probably what he's trying to import, the nation will benefit. Probably he's employing thousands of people, or even if they are very few, but at least some people will benefit. But in this case, who are benefiting from all the dollars that, and if you go to the banks and see the kind of queues that are actually being formed every day, you know, people just waiting for you to go and lodge, you know, your dollars so that they can access it. And what do? The moment they get it,
they go to
the parallel market and see what they can do. Actually, some BDC operators, what they do, they even go to the banking hall and just wait for those who will be you know, withdrawing from their domiciliary accounts, you know, so that they pay them right there. You don't even have to.
Sometimes it's just easy, you know, doing it with the BDCs. You have more access and you get it prompt. But in the banks, it's so difficult. They make it so.
Well, because so many people are actually accusing even the banks, you know, of supplying the parallel market because they are in business to make money. They are not like here as a charity organization. So if they can be taking all the dollars that they have to the BDCs, to the parallel market, honestly, I wouldn't blame them because we allowed that system to thrive.
Well, it looks like we have a lot of work to do there.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, there's this another very interesting one before we move on to other issues. The one about federal government to establish 3.5 billion space museums in Abuja.
Well, it's a good one, but...
Do you need that at this point?
Yeah, it's a good one because we are talking about the fact that we are not actually making much from the things that we have, you know, like the tourism industry, our museums and what have you. But without doing like the right thing, you will end up spending your money and then there will be nobody to patronize it. And if that happens, then you will have failed but right now there is so much actually to be made. from things like this. And because even the world over, attention is beginning to move away from all this fossil fuel and things like that. People are now trying to see what they can do, with what they have, so that they will be able to make money out of it.
All right. Well, let's move slightly away from that. For a while now, I mean, we celebrated the fact that we were not talking about insecurity for a very long time, because there was a time whereby whenever you pick up the newspapers, you listen to the news, that is what dominates everything. But there has been a lull. But unfortunately, one of the major incidents that actually occurred and is being reported by the papers is the kidnap of 39 children in Katsina. And we heard one of the papers saying that these terrorists are actually demanding for 30 million naira as ransom for these children. Will we ever see an end to this?
You see, sometimes, anyway, you just have to appreciate our security forces, because they are doing quite a lot. And actually what they did was responsible for the lull that you talked about. But unfortunately, sometimes we become, is it complacent? Because anytime you think you have made some gains, then you tend to withdraw and maybe rest and believe that things are over. But the criminals are also paying attention. Once they see an opportunity, once they see a window, they try to use it. Because what do? Basically, that's the only thing they know. They are criminals, they are into criminalities, so you don't expect them to all the preachings that we are making that people should go to the farm. No, they know about the farms.
Exactly.
And they have decided that they are not going into that. What they are, because as far as they are concerned, they get all the money that they want to get, through the criminal enterprise. So it's actually left for the security agents, not to rest, to maintain the momentum, to be on it, so that all the gains that they make are not reversed by all these bandits and criminals. And anytime you hear about, the money that they are demanding, maybe you begin to see why the Central Bank of Nigeria is trying to redesign the currency. Because maybe if you do that, there may be no money for even those who may want to take the ransom to all these criminals. They may not be able to access it. But like we said, the criminals also flow with the time. They may tell you to, instead of bringing money, to bring a brand new motorcycle. There are so many things that they do. So the security agencies and the government, should make sure that we are doing, what we are supposed to do. That's protecting lives, and property. Because most of the people that are actually living in villages and communities outside the metropolis and what have you, they're having a difficult time. You can't go to the farm. Like even in the case of Katsina, they said one of the people actually paid a 3 million naira levy to the bandits. But he couldn't give them all the money at once. So because of that, they decided to strike and, abduct these small children that are actually looking forward to it. Because without that, what do you expect them to do?
Well, that is quite unfortunate. We do hope that things can get better, and of course we'll see the last of it. All right, Nasrullah, thank you very much for coming on the show. Editor-in-Chief, Dateline Nigeria. Thank you very much for the beautiful insights and of course the analysis.
Thank you for having me.
All right, now this is where we will end the newspaper review on Daybreak this morning. The show continues. Do stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a person look at the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that